Sophia's life was, by all outward appearances, perfect. She lived in a quaint suburban neighborhood where the lawns were always green, the houses well kept, and the streets quiet. Sophia took pride in her home, a cozy haven filled with memories of her marriage to James. They had been together for nearly 10 years, and though their life was simple, it was one Sophia cherished deeply. That morning started like any other. The sun streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow over the hardwood floors. Sophia hummed softly to herself as she dusted the living room, her mind wandering to the dinner she planned to make for James that evening. Their 10th anniversary was approaching, and she wanted everything to be perfect. As she moved to the study, she noticed a stack of old papers on the desk, mostly bills and letters they hadn't sorted through yet. Sophia sat down, intending to organize them. As she sifted through the pile, one envelope caught her eye. It was older than the others, worn at the edges, with handwriting that wasn't James's. Curious, she pulled it out and carefully opened it. The letter inside was brief, but the words struck Sophia like a physical blow. "Dear James, I can't wait for our next meeting. Being with you is the highlight of my day. I love you more than words can say. A." Sophia felt the air leave her lungs. Her hands trembled as she reread the words, hoping she had somehow misinterpreted them. But there was no mistake. The affectionate tone, the secretive nature, it was all too clear. This was not just a letter, it was evidence of betrayal. Her thoughts raced as she tried to piece together how long this had been going on. Who was A? How had she not noticed anything unusual about James's behavior? The tears that welled up in her eyes weren't just from sadness, they were from anger, from the deep-seated betrayal she now felt in the pit of her stomach. For a moment, she considered confronting James immediately, but she quickly realized she needed time to process this. Sophia placed the letter back in the envelope and tucked it away in her pocket. She didn't want to fly off the handle without understanding the full picture. As the day wore on, Sophia's mind was consumed by thoughts of the letter. She replayed memories of the past few months in her head, looking for signs she might have missed. Had James been distant? Had he been staying late at work more often? The more she thought about it, the more the little things began to add up, like the times he would step outside to take a call, or the nights he claimed to be working late. That evening, when James walked through the door, he was greeted by the smell of his favorite dish, lasagna. Sophia had prepared dinner as usual, determined not to let on that anything was wrong. She needed more time to think, to figure out how she wanted to handle this situation. James kissed her on the cheek and smiled. "Hey, honey, what's for dinner?" he asked, his tone light and cheerful. Sophia forced a smile. "Lasagna," she replied, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. They sat down to eat, and James carried on as if nothing were amiss. He talked about his day at work, about a new project he was excited about, but Sophia barely heard him. She nodded and responded where necessary, but her mind was elsewhere. After dinner, Sophia excused herself and went upstairs, leaving James to clean up the kitchen. She sat on the edge of their bed, staring at the framed photo of the two of them on their wedding day. They looked so happy, so full of hope and love. How had it come to this? When James finally joined her in the bedroom, he noticed her distant expression. "Is everything okay, Sophia?" he asked, concern flickering across his face. Sophia hesitated, but then she looked him straight in the eye. "James, we need to talk." The words hung heavy in the air. James's expression shifted from concern to something darker, more guarded. He must have noticed the change in her tone, the coldness in her eyes. "Sophia," he started, but she cut him off by reaching into her pocket and pulling out the letter. She placed it on the bed between them. "What is this?" she asked, her voice cold and unwavering. James stared at the letter, his face paling as recognition dawned. His eyes flicked up to meet hers, and for a moment, they simply stared at each other in silence. The room was so quiet that the ticking of the clock on the wall seemed deafening. James finally spoke, his voice trembling slightly. Sophia, I can explain. Sophia felt a surge of anger at his words. Explain what, James? That you've been having an affair, that you've been lying to me for who knows how long. James opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. He seemed to deflate before her eyes, his shoulders slumping, as the weight of the situation settled on him. I didn't want to hurt you, he whispered. Sophia laughed bitterly. Well, you did a great job of that. How long, James? How long has this been going on? James looked down at his hands, unable to meet her gaze. 6 months, he finally admitted. But Sophia, it didn't mean anything. I swear, it was just a stupid mistake. A mistake? Sophia's voice was laced with disbelief. A mistake is forgetting our anniversary, not betraying your wife for 6 months. I know, and I'm so sorry, James pleaded, his voice breaking. I love you, Sophia. I never wanted this to happen. Sophia stood up, unable to sit still any longer. She began pacing the room, her mind racing. If you loved me, how could you do this? How could you lie to me every single day? I was stupid, James said, his voice filled with regret. I didn't think. I got caught up in the moment, and I didn't know how to stop. But I ended it, I swear. I ended it because I realized what I was risking. Sophia stopped pacing and turned to face him. Do you even hear yourself, James? You ended it because you realized what you were risking? Not because you realized what you were doing to me? To us. James was silent, his eyes filled with remorse. He looked like a man who had lost everything. And in that moment, Sophia realized that he had. Whatever love or trust they had shared was shattered. I need time, she said finally, her voice calmer now, but no less firm. I need to think. I'm staying with Mia tonight. Sophia, please don't leave, James begged. We can work through this. We can fix it. But Sophia shook her head. I've heard enough, James. I can't even look at you right now. Without another word, she grabbed a bag and began packing a few things. James watched her, desperation in his eyes, but he didn't try to stop her. He knew that this was the consequence of his actions, and there was nothing he could say to make it right. As Sophia walked out the door, she felt a strange sense of detachment, as though she were watching herself from a distance. Her life had been upended in a matter of hours, and now she had to figure out what to do next. Sophia stayed with Mia for several days, trying to make sense of her emotions. Mia was a rock, offering support without pressing her for details. She simply let Sophia talk when she needed to, and listened without judgment. I can't believe he did this to me, Sophia confided one evening, as they sat on Mia's porch, sipping tea. I thought we were happy. I thought we had a good marriage. Mia nodded sympathetically. It's always the ones who think everything is perfect who get blindsided. But Sophia, you're stronger than you think. You'll get through this. Sophia appreciated Mia's words, but she couldn't help feeling lost. She had built her life around her marriage, around James. Now that foundation had crumbled, and she wasn't sure who she was without it. As the days passed, Sophia found herself reflecting more and more on her relationship with James. She thought about the early years of their marriage, the way they had been so in love, so sure of their future together. She thought about the times they had laughed, cried, and supported each other through life's challenges. But now, all of those memories were tainted by the knowledge of his betrayal. James called her every day, leaving messages on her phone. But she didn't answer. She wasn't ready to face him, to deal with the fallout of his actions. She needed time to heal, to figure out what she wanted. Finally, after nearly a week, Sophia decided it was time to confront James again. She couldn't avoid him forever, and there were practical matters to consider, like whether they would try to repair their marriage or go their separate ways. She arranged to meet James at a cafe, a neutral location where she could maintain some distance from the emotional weight of their conversation. When she arrived, James was already there, looking tired and anxious. Sophia, he greeted her as she sat down. His voice was tentative, as though he were afraid of saying the wrong thing. James, she replied, her tone neutral. She wasn't here to make him feel better. She was here to get answers. For a moment, they simply sat in silence, neither of them knowing how to begin. Finally, James spoke. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "But I want you to know that I've been going to therapy, trying to understand why I did what I did. I've realized how much I hurt you, and I'm so sorry." Sophia listened, her expression unreadable. "Why did you do it, James?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. "Was I not enough for you?" James shook his head vehemently. "It was never about you, Sophia. You've always been more than enough. It was about me, my own insecurities, my own selfishness. I was looking for something that was never missing in the first place." Sophia sighed, the weight of his words settling on her shoulders. "So what now, James? What do you want, I've thought a lot about this," she began, choosing her words carefully. "I loved you, James. I really did. But trust is everything in a marriage, and you broke that. I don't know if we can come back from this." James nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. "I understand, but if there's any chance, any at all, I'm willing to fight for it." Sophia took a deep breath, feeling the tears prick at the corners of her own eyes. Maybe we can try," she said softly. "But it's going to take a lot of work, and I'm not making any promises. I need to protect myself this time." James reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers. "Thank you, Sophia. That's all I ask for, a chance to make things right." She didn't take his hand, not yet, but she nodded, acknowledging that they were both willing to try. It wasn't a reconciliation, not fully, but it was a step toward healing. Over the next few weeks, James worked hard to prove his commitment to rebuilding their relationship. He attended therapy sessions, both alone and with Sophia, where they delved into the issues that had led to his infidelity. Sophia appreciated his efforts, but she remained cautious, knowing that trust would take time to rebuild. They spent more time together, going on small dates, talking about their feelings, and trying to reconnect. But despite their efforts, the shadow of James's betrayal loomed large. There were moments when Sophia would catch herself thinking about the letter, about the lies he had told, and she would pull back, unable to fully open herself up to him again. One evening, as they sat on the porch of their home, Sophia turned to James. "Do you think we'll ever get back to the way we were?" she asked, her voice tinged with sadness. James looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "I don't know," he admitted. "I hope so. But I think we have to accept that things might never be the same. All we can do is try to build something new, something better." Sophia nodded, appreciating his honesty. "I just wish I could trust you again, James. But every time I start to, I remember what you did." "I know," James said softly. "And I don't expect you to trust me right away. But I'm here, Sophia. I'm not going anywhere." The weeks turned into months, and while there were moments of hope, there were also moments of doubt. Sophia struggled with the idea of forgiveness, of whether she could truly forgive James for what he had done. She knew that holding on to anger would only hurt her in the long run, but letting go was easier said than done. One day, as she was walking through the park, Sophia ran into an old friend, someone she hadn't seen in years. They sat down on a bench, catching up on each other's lives. "You seem different," her friend remarked after a while. "Like you've been through something." Sophia smiled faintly. "I have. My husband, he cheated on me. We've been trying to work through it, but it's been hard." Her friend nodded, a sympathetic look in her eyes. "I can't imagine what that must be like. But you know, forgiveness isn't just about letting the other person off the hook. It's about freeing yourself from the anger and pain. It's about moving on." Sophia thought about her friend's words long after they parted ways. She knew she was at a crossroads. She could either continue to hold on to the pain, or she could try to forgive James and move forward. But forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, and it didn't mean staying together if she couldn't rebuild the trust they had lost. That evening, Sophia sat down with James in their living room. "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady but serious. James looked at her, his expression unreadable. "What's on your mind?" "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Sophia began. and I've realized that I need to forgive you, not just for your sake, but for mine. I can't keep holding on to this anger if I want to move on with my life." James nodded, his face a mixture of relief and sadness. "I understand. But forgiveness doesn't mean things go back to the way they were," Sophia continued. "I don't know if I can ever trust you the way I did before, and if I can't trust you, I don't know if we can stay together." James's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't argue. He knew that this was her decision to make. "I'll accept whatever you decide, Sophia," he said quietly. "I just want you to be happy." Sophia reached out and took his hand for the first time in months. "I want to be happy too, James. And maybe that means we have to go our separate ways. But I'll always care about you. And I'll always be grateful for the good times we had." James squeezed her hand, his tears falling freely now. "Thank you, Sophia, for everything." In that moment, Sophia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew that she was ready to face it, whether it was with James by her side or not. A few months later, Sophia and James decided to part ways. Possibility. James continued his therapy, working on his issues and striving to be a better person. They remained friends, occasionally meeting up for coffee and catching up on each other's lives. There was no bitterness between them, only a quiet understanding that their time together had come to an end. As the years passed, Sophia realized that she had made the right decision. She had forgiven James, not just for what he had done, but for the way their marriage had ended. She had let go of the past and embraced the future, and in doing so, she had found peace. Sophia stood on the balcony of her apartment one evening, looking out at the city lights. She felt a sense of contentment, of knowing that she had come through the hardest time in her life, stronger and more resilient than before. She smiled to herself, knowing that she had found her way back to happiness, and that was more than enough.